The day I moved into that apartment, I wasn't chasing anything new. I was running from what I'd lost. New city, new walls, new silence. That was the deal I made with myself. I didn't want neighbors. I didn't want connections. I just wanted space where my past couldn't follow me. The first sound I heard, there wasn't traffic or music or voices. It was a basketball. Bounce. Catch. Bounce. Catch. The rhythm came through the wall late into the night, steady and patient, like someone practicing for something they weren't allowed to fail at. I lay on my mattress, still on the floor, because I hadn't built the bed frame yet, staring at the ceiling and listening. I didn't know why, but the sound made me feel less alone. I met him the next morning in the hallway. He stepped out of the apartment beside mine at the exact moment I did, nearly bumping into me. Tall, athletic, confident without trying. A gym bag hung over his shoulder, and he smelled faintly like fresh air and sweat like effort. "Hey," he said with an easy smile. "You must be the new neighbor." That was how I met Jason. Everyone in the building knew who he was. The basketball star. The one with posters in the gym windows, and kids wearing his jersey around the neighborhood. I was just Daniel, the quiet guy who moved in with too many boxes and not enough confidence. We talked for less than 2 minutes. He asked where I'd moved from. I said I just needed a change. Then he casually said, "My girlfriend helped me move in last year. You'll probably see her around." That single sentence drew a clear line between us. Straight. Taken. Off limits. For some reason. That should have been the end of the story. It wasn't. Our friendship grew the way most things do when you don't pay attention. Slowly and all at once. Passing hellos turned into small conversations. Small conversations turned into shared routines. We left for work around the same time. We came home late from our separate lives and crossed paths in the hallway, like it was coincidence instead of choice. Some nights, I'd hear a soft knock on the wall. Not my door. The wall itself. That was our strange little signal. We'd sit on opposite sides, backs against the drywall, talking about nothing and everything. He'd talk about the pressure of expectations, how everyone saw the version of him on the court, but no one cared who he was when the lights went off. I talked about restarting my life after a breakup that left me feeling like I'd misplaced myself. He never judged. He just listened. And somehow, without planning it, that listening became something I depended on. Emily came by sometimes. She was kind, warm, gentle in a quiet way. They looked like the perfect couple from the outside. But I noticed things I pretended not to notice. Long silences. The way Jason's smile changed when she left. The way his shoulders dropped when the door closed behind her. I told myself it was none of my business. But when he came over after late practices, exhausted, restless, unable to sleep, it became my business without me agreeing to it. We'd sit on opposite ends of the couch, the TV playing quietly as background noise. He'd talk about missed shots, about the game repeating in his mind even when his body needed rest. I'd nod, offer quiet reassurance. One night, after a bad loss, he didn't even turn on the TV. "I don't feel like myself anymore," he said quietly, staring at his hands. Something in his voice pulled at me. I didn't give advice. I didn't pretend to fix it. I just stayed. And in staying, I crossed a line I didn't see until it was already behind me. After that, I became his first message and his last. Not because he said it, but because his phone showed it. Good games. Bad days. Small victories no one else noticed. He told me everything. And I started waiting for those messages in ways I couldn't explain. That's when the guilt crept in. I knew this wasn't just friendship anymore. I felt it in the strange tightness in my chest when I heard his steps outside my door, in the way my mood changed when he laughed, in the way I noticed the exact sound of his knock compared to anyone else's. Nothing physical had happened, but emotionally, something dangerous was growing. One rainy night, the city washed in streetlight reflections and quiet thunder, Jason sat beside me and said something that shifted the ground beneath my feet. "You're the only person who really sees me." He didn't look at me when he said it, but I felt the weight of it settle between us, because those words didn't belong to me. They should have belonged to the woman waiting for him at home. And in that moment, I understood the truth I had been avoiding. I wasn't just a neighbor anymore. I had become the secret. And instead of stepping away, instead of protecting everyone involved, I stayed. The change didn't happen all at once. It arrived in quiet shifts I barely noticed until they became impossible to ignore. Jason started coming over more often. Not every night, but enough that my apartment no longer felt like just mine. He brought the restless energy of the court with him, the weight of expectations still clinging to his shoulders even after the noise of the crowd was gone. Some nights he talked endlessly. Other nights he barely spoke at all. Emily's visits became shorter. I never asked why, but I noticed the way his eyes followed the door after she left, the way he exhaled only once she was gone, the way his phone stayed face down on my table now, when it used to light up constantly. One night, he admitted it without fully admitting it. "She thinks I'm distant," he said quietly, "but I don't know how to explain what I'm feeling." I wanted to tell him to go home, to talk to her, to fix it before it broke. Instead, I listened, and that was the moment I realized the danger wasn't attraction. It was dependence. He didn't stop loving her overnight. He just stopped turning to her when things got hard. And without meaning to, I became the place he ran to emotionally. That truth sat heavy on my chest in ways I couldn't shake. I started pulling back in small ways, taking longer to respond, ending conversations earlier than usual, finding reasons to be busy. I told myself I was doing the right thing. Jason noticed immediately. "You okay?" he asked one night when I kept our conversation short. "Just tired," I lied. Distance, I learned, only makes confusion louder. The next turning point came after one of the worst games of his season. He showed up at my door long after midnight, not knocking the way he used to, standing there silently until I opened it. His eyes were red, not from crying, but from holding it back. Inside, he sank onto the couch like his body had finally given up carrying the pressure. "I don't know who I am without this," he whispered, "and I don't know who I am anymore at all." That was the night he finally said what neither of us had wanted to name. "I think about you all the time." The room went painfully still. Not love, not desire, just confusion heavy enough to tear his life open. I stood up slowly, trying to breathe past the way those words shook me. "You have a girlfriend," I said softly. "I know," he replied, "and that's what's messing me up." That was the moment I understood the full weight of what we become. Not two people falling freely, but two people trapped between guilt and truth. After that night, everything changed. We didn't sit as close. We didn't talk as late. And yet, the space between us felt tighter than ever. Every glance felt loaded. Every silence carried something unsaid. Emily started coming around unexpectedly. Once, she showed up while Jason was in my apartment. The knock at the door landed like thunder. I watched his face shift instantly. Guilt, panic, hesitation all crossing at once. That look alone told me how deep this had gone. When he opened the door, I stayed in the background, silent, invisible. She smiled politely at me, asked how long I'd lived there, thanked me for being such a good neighbor. Her kindness made the weight in my chest unbearable. After she left that night, Jason didn't celebrate the narrow escape. He just sat beside me with his head in his hands. "I'm hurting her," he whispered. And still, he didn't walk away. The worst moment came weeks later, during what should have been a celebration. He'd had one of the best games of his career. Crowd roaring, teammates cheering, cameras flashing. When everyone surrounded him afterward, he looked for one person. Me, not Emily. That was the moment I knew this had crossed into something neither of us could undo quietly. Later that night, sitting in my living room with the city glowing through the window, Jason said the sentence that changed everything. "If I walk away from her, it's because of you." The words didn't feel romantic. They felt like a burden I never agreed to carry. Tears burned behind my eyes. Not because I wanted to choose me, but because I never wanted to be the reason someone else was abandoned. "I don't want to be the mistake you regret," I said. Silence followed, and in that silence, I realized something terrifying. No matter what choice he made, someone was going to get hurt. The tension didn't explode the way I expected. There was no shouting through walls, no slam doors, no dramatic scenes in the hallway. It unraveled quietly. Emily came over less. When she did, her smile didn't quite reach her eyes anymore. Jason grew slower to answer her calls, slower to explain himself. And every time I saw her walk away from our building, something twisted painfully inside my chest. I had become the space between them. The guilt stopped letting me sleep. I started packing at night when Jason was at practice, folding clothes slowly, tucking memories into boxes I never planned to fill again. I told myself I was doing this for all of us. That distance was the only mercy left. Jason sensed it before I said a word. "You're leaving," he said one evening, not as a question. "I have to," I answered. "This isn't fair to anyone." He didn't argue right away. He just stared at the floor like he was watching everything slip through his fingers. "She knows something's wrong," he finally whispered. "She asked me if there's someone else." My breath caught. "What did you say?" He shook his head slowly. "Nothing. And that's the part one hate the most." For the first time since I had known him, Jason looked small. Not the athlete, not the star, just a man who had waited too long to choose honesty. 2 nights later, it happened. Emily came to the building unexpectedly. I was standing by my window. When I saw her car pull up, my stomach dropped. I watched Jason open the door for her, his posture stiff, his smile strained. They disappeared into his apartment together. The walls that once carried the sound of late-night laughter stayed silent. For nearly an hour, I sat on my bed surrounded by half-packed boxes, hands shaking, knowing this moment had been inevitable and still feeling completely unprepared for it. When the door finally opened again, Emily walked out alone. Her face wasn't angry. It was broken. She didn't look at my door. She didn't look up at my window. She just got into her car and drove away slowly, like she wasn't ready to return to whatever waited for her next. Minutes later, Jason knocked. Not on the wall, on my door. I opened it and found him standing there with tears in his eyes, undone in a way I had never seen before. "I told her," he said. My heart pounded. "Everything." He nodded. That I was confused. That I was leaning on someone else for what I should have been giving her. That I didn't cheat with my body, but my heart left a long time ago. I felt the weight of that truth crush down on both of us. "She deserves better than this," he said. "And so do you." That was the moment I knew he finally understood. Love built in secret doesn't feel like love when the truth finally arrives. That night, I finished packing. At sunrise, I carried the last box to my car. The sky was quiet, pale with early light. The building looked ordinary again, like it hadn't changed 3 lives from the inside out. Jason stood by the curb, silently, as I loaded the trunk. "I never meant to use you as an escape," he said softly. "I know," I replied, "but that's what we became." He stepped forward like he wanted to stop me, then hesitated. For a moment, all the things we never said hung between us. "I don't know who I'm going to be after this," he admitted. "You'll be someone honest." I said, "That has to be enough." I closed the trunk, and this time, he didn't try to stop me. Months passed. I rebuilt my life slowly, brick by brick, silence by silence. I learned to sit with my choices without trying to rewrite them. I learned that loving someone doesn't always mean staying. One evening, long after I'd stopped expecting it, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Jason. "She's healing. I'm not ready for anything new, but I needed you to know what we shared changed me, and I'm finally facing who I am." I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I sent one final reply. "I hope you become someone you're proud of." And that was the end, not of love, but of a chapter that taught me the hardest lesson I've ever learned. Some people don't enter your life to stay. They enter to wake you up.